Eh? Welcome to the building construction, the consultancy show where we seek to educate, challenge, and inspire you on your journey of construction. Now, today we are live and we want to have an engagement together, and mine is to be able to connect with each and every one of us who will be joining us this evening for a conversation. Indeed, it is the 5th of February, and the year is still new. And I know that right now, as the year is still new, we have a renewed sense of energy. We have a lot of optimism. We have a lot of hope that the year will come with good tidings. Indeed, it's in the heart of each and every one of us to be able to succeed. We want to succeed this year. We want to do extra beyond that which we have done the years before. All of us want to succeed. And the reason why we are even talking about construction is because construction is part of success. It's part of how, as human beings, we gauge success. For example, owning a home is an indicator, is one of the parameters by which many of us would gauge that I have been successful. Yeah, sorry for that. We are talking about the various needs that are met when one has a home. And we talked about the physiological needs, psychological needs. We also have the aspect of belongingness. We talk of esteem needs, where a home is, when one is able to own a home, it creates a sense of high self-esteem. You feel good about yourself. Yeah, so there's a lot that a home, it's not just a building, it's not just a matter of doing stones and concrete. It has a lot of meaning. It's like a signature by itself. One other need that a home does to somebody is there is an element of a self-actualization. We are all looking for self-actualization, and we are all looking to be able to get that place of living that dream life that we have always desired. A home is able to create that element where we are able to feel like we are living that dream life. In fact, I had one time a joke. Someone was saying that there are 6 things that a successful person has. Well, it's a joke, saying that A successful man has one wife, 2 children, 3 bedroomed house, a 4-wheel drive, a 5-acre piece of land, and a 6-figure salary. Well, of course, that is speaking casually. Of course, not really the full aspect of success. It has success is much deeper. There's much to do with success. But indeed, as we are talking about all those 6 elements, there's a place where everyone is desiring to get there. And as they say, talk of a 3-bedroomed house, it could be 4-bedroom house, could be a 5-bedroom house. So there's so much that goes into our pursuit for success. So when one is able to build a house, when one is able to either buy a piece of land and build a house, or they are able to buy a fully finished building, whether it is in an estate or you have bought a house that is already complete, there is a sense of fulfillment that it brings. And I know many of us who are desiring to do construction, there is that aspect that we would want to pursue. So tonight I would want to have an engagement with us. Are you this person who wants to construct? Are you this person who intends to do a construction either this year, or you are intending to do construction for your home in the near future? Either you bought a piece of land or you haven't. You are still there trying to evaluate, how do I navigate? If you are there, maybe you can post, if it's a question, you can post a question on the live chat. I'm able to see those of us who have joined. Maybe you can also just give a shout out if you are there with us, so that we are able to see you are here. Thank you. I can see Giraffe. Thank you very much, Giraffe. I see David. Thank you very much, David. And can also see Nancy, can see Muihaki. Thank you very much. Maybe let's keep on engaging and asking ourselves, what are some of the issues that would want us to discuss, be it the process of construction. Now, one thing that I always say is that construction is not a cheap venture. Construction is not a cheap venture. There are huge costings that are involved. And interestingly, it is not that straightforward. It's like starting a business. Doing a construction is like starting a business, yes. Because starting a business, you require capital. And some of the businesses, you would actually require a heavy investment in terms of capital. The second thing is that, just like a business, the fact that it's not straightforward, there are conmen, there are people who would want to take advantage of you. You need to have it right. You need to be clear on what you want. You need to be able to foresee the end as from the beginning. And sometimes we are taken advantage of when we do not have that in mind. See, Moihaki is asking about comparing precast versus building blocks. Are precast cheaper? I think your question is talking about walling, the precast wall panels vis-a-vis the building blocks, or what we call the masonry stones. Which one is cheaper? All right, I think we'll be able to have an engagement in that area as we move forward. As part of the lineup, I would want to ask Mihaki to be able to hold on as we continue, but your question is taken. By the end of our video tonight, we'll be able to get to that place where we can say that we have a bit of understanding as far as construction is concerned. And I would want to, I don't want to talk about the whole spectrum of construction. I would want to kind of narrow down to home ownership. When we talk about construction, there are many kinds of construction. You could be constructing your own home, a residential house. You could also be constructing a residential apartment, or it could be a commercial building. It could also be an institution block. Construction is also found in roads, construction of bridges, culverts, and what have you. So there's so much in the area of construction that we can talk about. But for tonight, so that we are able to have a much deeper conversation, I would want to narrow down mostly to home ownership, and I want to believe that we'll be able to get to connect very well. So Nancy here is saying that she would want us to discuss on the beam and block. Yeah, the beam and block. It is also one of the alternative technologies that we'll also be talking about. We want to have a reflection on that as well. Now, before I talk about the alternative technologies, I want to engage us a bit in terms of what are the requirements before you start your construction. What are some of the requirements before you start your construction? And I'm assuming that we are looking at the laid procedure. In one of the previous videos, someone had asked on something that I talked about in the same line of requirements, and asked, does this also apply to people who are in the rural setup? I would say that places are different. The rule may be there, but how it's followed up, or how the authorities take up the matter, would vary from place to place. There are places where you can easily just do construction and just start and you'll continue. But there's a general understanding that there are stages that you need to follow from wherever you are in. Only that the authorities may or may not follow up with that. So the strictness by which the authorities follow up on these regulations would vary from place to place, from county to county, from region to region. Say, for example, if you are in very remote places, so interior, in a county that is far away from the city, then that means that it is easy for you to just go ahead and do construction without really having to follow up on or to adhere to the set guidelines. So the answer would be that yes, you are required to undertake those guidelines or for the set procedures, but also you will also be required to what do you call this? You'll also be required to ensure that you follow the right process, but it's up to you, and also depending with the place that you are in. So lucky for you if you are able to just construct and continue with the whole process without having to do all these follow all these stages. It will be just good for you. But nevertheless, you are required to follow these procedures as a requirement of the law. Now, one of the things that you do or before you start any construction is you need to buy land. You need to buy land. And land, or okay, let me assume you do not have a piece of land. Now, where do you start? You need to identify a piece of land, and then you go and buy it. Of course, that is obvious. Regardless of where you intend to buy, you require to buy the piece of land, and you identify this is where I want to build, and now move to the next stage. The next stage is the stage where we talk about having a plan, the drawn for you. When I talk about the plan, I'm talking about the drawings that would come from the consultants. The consultants here would be architects, engineers, or you need an architect, you need an engineer, and also a quantity surveyor, and also services engineers who here I'm talking about specifically mechanical and electrical engineers, right? So we first by getting the land, and then we come to the second stage where we have a drawing. And that drawing is what we call a plan. In this plan, it tells you, or you are, it is, a plan is more or less a reflection of what you have in your mind. Okay? That I want a sitting room, a dining, a kitchen, or any other rooms for that matter, and this is how I would want them arranged. So all that is captured in form of a drawing. So basically, drawing is a communication. It's a way in which, in construction, we do communicate. So the communication here is not only telling you where will be, what will be where, but also the communication is also talking about the sizes, or what called dimensions, of each particular room, so that it is easy for the people who will be implementing, the fundis. It will be very easy for them to be able to undertake the construction. Then, after the plans have been done, then we now start approvals. There are few documents that are required for you to be able to undertake approval. And approval here, I'm talking about approval in the county authorities, and other government, other regulatory bodies. And more specifically, I'm talking about NEMA and the NCA. NEMA is National Environmental Management Authority. And NCA is National Construction Authority. So NEMA is more focused on environment. Many times you don't need a change of use in areas that do not require that you don't need to, that you are not supposed to do a residential house, and you'll be required to do a change of use. Maybe it's a commercial area and then you want to do a residential house. But in many places, you would not be required to do a change of use for a single dwelling. A single dwelling here, we talk about a residential house for yourself, for one home. Okay? So if you are doing several houses for several individuals in the same piece of land, then that is not considered as a single dwelling. It's considered as a multi-dwelling. And for multi-dwelling, in many cases, you'll be required to do what we call a change of use. Now, if you have cleared the land rate and you have come to this stage where you have finished, and you are not required to do the change of use, then you come and start approval at the county. And you'll be required your own personal documents. You'll be required the drawings that have been done by the architect, and also will be required the drawings from the engineer. The other document will be required is a survey map. You'd also be required a title deed or any other document that shows your legal ownership of the piece of land. And for certain documents, you'll be required to attach an affidavit. Certain documents will be required to attach an affidavit of this to just ascertain that indeed this piece of land is yours or is in your custody. Then you will be required to pay for that approval to be undertaken. Places might take say a few weeks, a month, or even 2 months. Sometimes there are delays depending on how the authorities are behaving. So once you have done all that and you have attached every other document that is required and it undergoes the process of approval at the county level, then you will be notified once the approval is done, and then you will get what we call a construction permit. So the construction permit is obtained from the authority, from the county authorities, once you have finished undertaking your approval at the county, both for the architectural and the structural drawings, if the structural are applicable. And of course, the other documents that will be required to be attached alongside the plans, those plans, that is the legal documents or the professional documents from the professionals that you have engaged, their licenses, that is. So you have finished doing your approval at the county stage. You now move to the other authorities. You will have NEMA approval. You also then finish with NCA approval. So that stage is very important. Otherwise, if in many places you will find yourself being harassed just because you are not able to follow the right process. So maybe if at all you have a question in regards to that, I would want us to continue and engage. I can't see any other question, but I still have the question from Mwihaki and Nancy that are talking about the alternative building technologies. One talks about comparing the precast wall panels vis-a-vis the conventional building stones. That's what being called the building blocks. So are precast panels cheaper? Second question was asking about, would you also discuss on the beam and block? Would you also discuss on the beam and block conversation? Then Nancy is also asking, how long does it take for approvals? Do they have an expiry date? How long does it take for approvals? Do they have an expiry date? Well, I talked about approvals at different places. There is the county authorities, that is the county council. If you're in Nairobi, you'll be required to have your drawings approved in the Nairobi County. If it is Kiambu, the Kiambu County, so on and so forth, okay? Depending on where the piece of land is. Then, once that is done, then you go to NEMA, then you finish with NCA. How long does this whole process take? How long from the onset to the end? It depends. It depends with the place, the county, because now there are bureaucracies that would be involved in this process, and some places there is, you understand, there are places where corruption would be the order of the day in some instances. I wouldn't shy to talk about that because it is one of the major struggles that we have in the industry. But ordinarily, the whole approval process should take between 2 to 3 months, ordinarily. Talking about NEMA, talking about NCA, talking about county. But if you are able to navigate faster or smart, then you can also be able to do it in less than 2 months, right? Then what is the expiry date? How long does this approval take before it expires? Okay, I would say 2 years. Normally, approvals obtained from the county are valid for 2 years. After that, you will be required to do a renewal. You are not going to start like approving all over again. you'll be required to do a renewal. But of course, you are not required to apply for a renewal if you have finished, or you are the tail end, or you are almost finishing. If you are still doing the structure, you'll be required to do the approval. But if you are doing finishes, say for example, you had done your house within the 2 years, the main structure, the shell, and then 2 years have lapsed, you are yet to do tiles, do I go and get approvals done? No, you don't need to do. You don't need to do or renewal for certain finishes, like plastering. You had already done the wall. Okay, so now those ones would be, those can be easily eliminated. But in terms of say laying a slab, doing a wall, doing roofing, okay, I think even roofing, I don't find it possible for you to do, not to have roofed before then. Okay, so the expiry date is 2 years. David is asking, on the substructure bit, is cotton excavation really necessary? And says more, hello engineer, late but catching up on the discussion. Thank you so much, Sesmo. On the question about the substructure bit, is cotton excavation really necessary? Well, let me answer that question. Then I would want to talk about the alternative technologies as the questions have been asked. So, what is it about black cotton? Because it is an already, it's a thorn. I would say a thorn in the flesh as far as construction is concerned. The problem with black cotton is this, that black cotton swells when it is wet and shrinks when it is dry. So that action of expansion and contraction would have an effect on your building. A building is very, very sensitive to earth movements. Slight movements resort to cracks in the building. And these cracks can be seen on the floors or on the walls. So black cotton has a tendency of expansion and contraction resulting to the movement. And you will find there are places where black cotton, where there is black cotton, you'll find maybe the wall has cracked, or the slab has cracked, or the room seems to be separating. All that is as a result of the ground. It may not necessarily be that the construction was done badly. Maybe the superstructure, that is. The construction may have been done right. You may have used the right materials. You may have done everything the right way. All steps followed. Maybe the only thing that was missed was how you handle the soil. So, on the question about, with that understanding about black cotton, then the question about, would it be necessary to remove it? How I would answer it is it depends with one. Actually, let me just use that. Yeah, one, it depends with the permanency of the building. If you are doing a temporary shelter, you may not necessarily need to remove the black cotton soil. Say if at all your house is maybe done on mabati and it's just for a short time, you may not need to remove the black cotton soil. And secondly, it also depends on you as the developer, the risk. Would you want to take the risk of wanting to incur cost on the maintenance, and you are risking that the building can have those cracks? So what I would say is, if your building has a degree of permanency, I mean, it's like your residential house, first you need to evaluate to know the depth of your, you need to evaluate the depth of black cotton before you get to a hard surface. It's so unfortunate that there are some places where black cotton would go to such great depths and it becomes so hard for you to remove it. There are various ways you can navigate this. There are various ways you can navigate this, but it really depends on the depth of cotton and also depends on your pocket. Say for example, if you are building on a cotton that is shallow, maybe say a meter of that would translate to around 3 feet. If you have it on 3 feet deep or thereabout, then it is just right to just remove the cotton. Just remove the cotton and replace it with filler material. That would be marram. You could also import red soil to some layer. You can also bring hardcore, or what they would also call mchongo. There's mchongo, which is not so quality of hardcore, but it is still hardcore. But that would be best if the depth of cotton is not that much. But as you go deeper, then you can resort to other ways that would not necessitate you to remove the cotton completely. Say that you would do what we call suspending the house. Suspending looks like a very technical term, but in short, it is where you just erect your house and to rest on pillars. The pillars that are laid deep down, and then you bring back the cotton and everything is suspended on the pillars. That is more economical for situation where you have cotton that is significantly deep. But if it is excessively deep, and maybe you're not doing a very, very big structure, you can decide to create a floating foundation, what we call a raft, where you have one solid foundation and the house rests on it, and it just stays on top of the black cotton at some depth inside. So that is also something that you can also look into. So it is not all situations where you have to remove cotton. It depends on situation to situation. Now, let me read this from Mwihaki Getao. Mwihaki Getao. Sorry, if I am to hire a construction company to handle all approvals and construction, what documents should I request the construction company to provide to confirm they will offer professional services? Let me get this right. Sorry, if I am to hire a construction company to handle all approvals and construction, what documents should I request the construction company to provide to confirm they will offer professional services? Okay, another question, maybe that I would want to start with this question. Can cotton be used to backfill? Can cotton be used to backfill? Let me first start with this question of that, still talking about black cotton. Well, I talked about if you are not removing the cotton, you just bring back the cotton. In this case, you have decided maybe to suspend the whole house, or it is on a floating foundation. So that way you are good. You could also do it on piles. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. What to understand what are piles. But if you are not suspending your house, you just need to remove all the cotton. You do not backfill cotton. If your house is resting on the ground with its walls, you are doing foundation walls, and your slab is resting on the ground, not suspended. Of course, that's a technical term, and it would require a more personalized engagement to be able to understand that concept when we are talking about suspending the floor. So when you are suspending the floor, you are doing ordinary chuma, the normal chuma that you would have on first floor is what you do on ground floor. In that way, you can talk of you have suspended the slab. Normally, for the slab, we usually do what we call the BRC mesh, because the principal understanding is that on the ground floor, it will rest on the ground. It is resting on the soil immediately below it. But if you do not want it to rest, you do chuma so that the building does not crack. Otherwise, it resorts to crack. And construction. What documents should I request the construction company to provide to confirm they will offer professional services? Well, there are two groups that are involved in construction. Let me call them groups. The first group, the construction team. For you, drawings. To do following it up, they will have to submit the drawings. And then the construction team, ordinarily, you are tasking them in matters to do with construction. So, for the consultancy team, these are professionals. Of course, I would not be saying that the contractor is not professional, but I would look at it more of the contractor being a person who is here business. This is pure business. It's just, I'm bringing a team of fundis, I'm putting in my money, or I'm being paid to do this, and this is what needs to be done, so they're just implementing. So they are implementing. But these ones are the designers. So the engineer, the architect, the quantity surveyor, and the services engineers are the ones who come up with the drawings. What are the requirements for them? One, it's very important to have the professionals who are licensed. We have different bodies that register the consultants. We have different bodies. So this consultancy is also regulated by the government. So they need to be licensed, they need to have a license. Whether it's from the Engineers Board of Kenya, the Board of Registration of Architects and Quantity Surveyors, that needs to be there. Because otherwise, any document that you get from an architect that does not have an attached license would not be processed or will not be approved. So they will be required to have a license. The architect would be required to have a license, a practicing license, and a registration certificate. That is also the same case with the engineer. And for the QS, the quantity surveyor, would also require to give their own license for the same, where it is required. So for the consultants, license is what they require. And of course, you'd want to know their profile, how have they been doing projects, what are some of the projects they are associated with, because that is important in the sense that if you cannot really ascertain what they are doing, will they deliver you quality? Will they deliver you quality? So it is good to do due diligence to know what they have. For the other side, the contractor, now, the contractor would require to, if you're engaging a contractor, you would be required to have a contractor who is licensed or has a registration with the National Construction Authority. You hear of NCA 8, NCA 7, NCA 6, NCA 5, NCA 4, NCA 3, NCA 2, NCA 1. So NCA 1 is a higher class of registration as compared to NCA 8. But of course, if someone has NCA 8, they are still okay to do for you the house. But again, also for the contractor, you also need to be sure of what they have done before. Can they show you what they have done before? Can they present sample of project they have undertaken? That will be very important. I hope that answers the question that Mwihaki had asked. Right. So having talked about the quantity surveyor, the architect, the engineer, and maybe I would want to mention this, that the architect, the QS, the engineer, the contractor, these are terminologies that sometimes look so confusing. Who are they? What is what? Where is where? You know? And I would start with the contractor. The contractor is the person who implements the instructions that have been given. He is given the blueprint, he's given the plan, and he implements it. He decodes the language. He ensures that what is required is what has been done. So he has a team of fundis who implement. So the contractor is engaged in the daily construction of that building, daily affairs pertaining the construction of that building from its start to finish. So that is the contractor. The engineer, the architect, and the QS are on this other side as professionals. They are called the consultants. So the consultants, the architect does what we call designing the space. They design the space. They give you the rooms that are required. The engineer comes and reinforces what would say, he ensures that what has been given, the proposal that has been given by the architect is constructible. So he makes it in a manner that can be easily constructed by the contractor. So in this case, that the engineer would require to give indications pertaining to the chuma that is required, what materials need to go in, how is it going to be done, what is the depth of the foundation, so on and so forth. Now, once the architect has come up with a plan and the engineer has done also his own instruction in terms of a drawing, then the two details are used by the quantity surveyors to come up with the building cost. So the quantity surveyor gives you indication or gives you the estimation of how much it's going to cost you to do that building. Okay. Yeah, so I can see we are moving on well. No, I want to believe that the question about the professionals is well understood, and also the topic, the subject on the black cotton soil, yeah, that has also been understood. Now, let me jump directly to the alternative technologies. Because here, Mwihaki had asked about the precast panels versus the building blocks, that is the walling. Of course, for a house, when we have what we call the foundation. Whatever is below the ground is the foundation. Okay, so the ground floor moving downwards is what we call the substructure. From the ground floor slab moving upwards to the roof, that is the superstructure. After you've done the roof, whether it's a roof slab or the normal roofing, then you now start doing the finishes. So tiles, plaster, paint, electrical wiring, the toilet fittings, and also the interior fittings, all those are put under the category of finishes. So the walling is under the, when you are doing the superstructure. So ordinarily, we would do what we call the masonry stones. It has been the common trend. It is the traditional approach that we have been used to, doing the masonry stones. And the masonry stones here is where you buy, you buy the stones from a quarry. We have talked of, we know of Darugo, Njiro, for those who are in, on these conventional approaches that we have had. Okay, so people are looking at ways that they can be able to navigate due to the increasing cost of materials. Are there cheaper alternatives? And so that's why you have heard of many alternatives that have come to perspective. You've had many alternatives that have come into perspective. It began with what we call the interlocking blocks. The interlocking, if I can remember clearly, the interlocking blocks, the soil interlocking blocks, were one of the early possibilities or alternatives that came in place of the conventional masonry wall. Masonry, I'm talking about the normal stones, the normal building blocks. So the interlocking blocks or interlocking soil blocks, we normally know it as Makiga. I think Makiga is a company that manufactures interlocking soil blocks, and they of course, because they really marketed themselves, so that concept was called Makiga, or the blocks were called Makiga. But again, that is more or less a company. The right name is interlocking soil stabilized blocks. So those interlocking blocks came, and they were made of soil that had been stabilized with cement. We call it stabilization, so that now it improves the soil capabilities. It improves the soil, so, and also enables the soil to hold together. Then it forms a block, and that block has grooves and tongue, so that the blocks are able to interlock together. In that way, you did not require cement, mortar at the middle of between the blocks, as compared to the ordinary stones where you required mortar in between the blocks. That gained a bit of momentum. It gained a bit of momentum, especially in the rural areas. But of course, there was the issue of aesthetics. One, aesthetics, and also two, the feeling of how do I call this? It didn't look like a classy. It didn't give a classy look. The interlocking, it looked like a cheap house, if I would say that, and especially for those blocks that were not done properly. It looks red. I mean, it looks soil, and of course, we know some of us came from the village where the houses were made of mud, and you are feeling like, again, I'm having to do a house that is of mud, only that it has a pattern. I mean, there was that psychological effect, and that really affected its uptake in the urban area. Of course, the interlocking blocks have really been doing so well, mostly in the rural areas, but they have not been doing so well in urban areas, and that really affected that. But again, I do not have anything ill of interlocking blocks. Are they good enough? Yeah, they are still good enough, but I would advocate for one who is making those blocks to ensure that they have the right cement content. The reason why I'm saying that is because when you do not have the right cement content, it is easy for those blocks to keep on disintegrating. You find on the sides of the blocks, there is fracturing, what we call spalling. The blocks begin to crack from the ends and ends up looking bad. So I have seen now new trends where the blocks have been improved from the red soil to a soil that is broad, that resembles the color of the ordinary stones. That has really improved those blocks, and that has also increased the rate at which the blocks are being consumed in the industry. So after the blocks have come, after the interlocking blocks have come, again, the cost of construction is still going high, and people are still wondering, how do we navigate? Now, other technologies have come into perspective. Of course, there are those which have come with a lot of speed. Again, depends on the way they have been marketed. And many other times when we are told that this technology will save you up to 30% of the construction cost, I'm very honest to tell you that I have not been convinced about that. I have not been convinced about that. I hope I'm not spoiling for anyone, but I've not been convinced as yet, because whenever someone tells you that it's going to save you 30% of your construction cost, you may need to ask what aspect of the construction cost, because if it is overall, then there is a big doubt about that. That 30% of the entire construction cost, there is a big doubt. There is a big doubt, because that particular technology is a small element vis-a-vis the whole picture of the house. And I would say here that finishes take roughly slightly above half of the construction cost. So I would assume the other half, or less than half, is what you require to do the slab, the foundation, the walling, if at all there are slabs. So to say that you are saving 30%, then it means that the substructure, the non-finishes part, or the main structure part, you'll spend 20%. Or if you are not plastering, because some of these technologies save on plastering. Again, plastering is also still another one of the elements within the many elements in the finishes. There is a doubt. But if you are comparing saving maybe say 30% of the walling cost, maybe that can apply, but not of the overall cost. So that if at all the house was to cost you 10 million and you only have 7 million, that if I apply this, then it's going to, and still maintaining everything else, that if at all I need to plaster, I will plaster. If at all I need to do some good tiles, I will still do good tiles, because the cost of the house is a factor of so many aspects. So you will not say that if at all my house was to cost 10 million and now I've gone to this technology, then it's going to save me, I'm going to only to spend 7 million. I'm not convinced. Now, okay, before I move forward, let me read this from Jacob Katei Mbugi. Jacob Katei Mbugi. I hope I'm getting that name right. My quiz is, even the newly amplified hidden roof technology, no saving, is that a question? Even the newly amplified hidden roof technology, no saving compared to the heap. I would desire if, Jacob, you are able to clarify your question, You may need to clarify that question, but maybe you can confirm if I've gotten you right. If it is a question, then the question, now you introduce some terminologies here, making it now, forcing me now to begin to explain what hidden roof and what the heap here is referring to. Okay, the hidden roof here is a concept where you are doing the ordinary roof, but it is kind of on a less slope, such that you will do what we call a wall around it, so that it looks as if it's a flat roof. So it's a normal roof that looks like a flat roof. Is what we call the hidden roof. Now, what Jacob is calling hip, what Jacob is calling hip is the normal roof. Is the normal roof. The normal roof would either be a gable. The gable is the one that has, it rises from this side and goes down on the other side, and that's it. That's a gable roof. The other one is a hipped roof that has sides on. I mean, it takes some certain shapes. So is that what we call the hipped roof? So does the hidden roof become a saving as compared to the hip? Let me discuss about roofing types. Let me write that one so that I don't forget, as we are looking at the alternative technologies, so that I don't mix up. I will not allow Jacob not to answer that now, because I'm still talking about the walling, but I will also talk about the roofing types. So the walling question, the slab question, and the roofing types question. Yeah. So, and if at all there is any other, we'll be able to read it and be able to engage. So, walling, we were talking about the trend that has been, and now new technologies have come after the Makiga, the interlocking soil blocks. Now other technologies have come. Of course, there were other technologies long before. There were other alternatives long before the masonry walls. Of course, we know of the drums. You know, these big drums that used to carry petrol and I mean the big, they were made of some heavy metal. One would do a few courses of stones and then do the rest of the wall with those drums, and voila, you have a house. Others would do it out of with iron sheets, the mabatis, with timber, and then you do the mabati, a heavy gauge, and you have a house. And inside you'll do the plywood. Yeah, and well done, comes out so nice. Still a technology, still an alternative to the ordinary masonry walls. Remember, the conventional for walling has been masonry walls. So mabati, the drums, they still do not create that ambience. They do not give you that good look that you desire for. It doesn't give a degree of, it doesn't look so permanent. It looks more temporary than permanent. So people have been evaluating what other ways can we employ to do the walls. Now here comes new technologies. Of course, I will just name a few. I know there are many. In fact, there are others that are still being introduced. Some I still am yet to understand them fully. But I just talk about a few that I have encountered. Maybe I think there could be two. Yeah. Well. Before I talk about the two, there are other ways that people have done their walling with stones, but comes out different. It's still another alternative. You have heard of a term called zero joint. A zero joint is where you, from the outside, you don't see those joints. You don't see the joints where mortar is put, but somehow the wall is intact. So it's still an alternative that has been employed. So it's an improvement of the ordinary masonry wall. And that is due to its beauty. It brings an aspect of beauty. There's also the bush the bush hammered stones, you find a wall iko na katumbo pale mbele, and that has been done nicely, and all the walls have like a stomach, you know, and then it could also be zero joint, or it could be normal joints, and all that is just a matter of improving the masonry stones. Now, yeah, Jacob says I got him right, so I'm glad. Then I'll be able to answer your question if I got your question right. So the masonry stones, other alternatives that have come up, I will start with what we call EP, expanded polystyrene technology, EPS. EPS, I wish I had a demonstration to show that, but EPS is the normal, you've seen, when you have seen the TVs, that when you buy a TV, there is that the white thing that covers the TV so nicely, or it could even be a fridge, and so that has been used. That material has been used to do a wall. So that polystyrene, the expanded polystyrene is done with reinforcement on its sides. There are some tumors that are put on the sides, and then a thin layer of concrete is poured on both sides. So that wall has a degree of strength, and then number two, it is firm. Number three, there's some soundproof. Yeah, and it's solid, kind of. Yeah, kind of. It has I talked about a degree of strength. So the EPS has been on the market for some years now. I know to some it might be a new concept. It might be a new concept, maybe you have never heard of it, maybe others you have heard of it. And then now here comes the other one, which is the precast wall panel. The precast wall panel. And as I said, that there are many alternatives that are developing. Like I saw something that has been developed, some interlocking blocks, new interlocking blocks that have been developed by some guys in Kibera. Shout out to them. Yeah, they are doing some good stuff. I liked the way the blocks are coming out. They allow you to do even curves very nicely. So there are many people are still inventing. People are still coming up with these new ideas. If you view even in some countries like India, say for example, they have other alternatives, many alternatives that have all over the world. I mean, people are coming up with new ideas just to be able to improve what we have. And before I respond to the question about the precast technology versus the masonry, because specifically the question was about the cost, the precast technology, the precast wall panels. There are videos that I've done about the precast wall panels. They have hollows. They are hollow. I mean, they have some holes. When I talk about lightweight concrete, is because the materials that are used to make that precast is not the ordinary ballast, it's not the ordinary sand. They use some lightweight ballast and lightweight sand. So that ensures the ballast and lightweight sand. So that ensures the precast panel is light because of transportation. That is for transportation, some load, and in many cases would advocate that if you are doing a precast panel or EPS, and your house has several floors, then it would be advisable to do columns, to do pillars, do some good pillars to support the structure. so that you do not burden, don't place a burden on the panels or on the wall. But for masonry, ideally we have not been doing so much of the pillars. So what about cost? What about cost? Again, I said that the cost of the technology is not fully what we are told, that it saves you 30, 35, 40% of your construction. The saving, the percentage of saving is dependent on what you are comparing it with. If you are looking at the whole house, or you are looking at that specific item. Say, for example, if I was to spend 300,000, if I was to spend 300,000 or 100,000 to do the wall, the normal wall, but then I end up doing the house, the wall with 70,000, then there's a 30% saving, but the 30% saving is not on the whole construction, but is on that particular element called the wall. So I've done a 30% saving on the wall, but that would not necessarily translate to 30% saving on the overall cost of construction. It could be maybe 5% or say 10%, depending. But anyway, a saving is a saving, and it's always welcome. So there are direct benefits that will be associated to a technology, and there are also indirect, direct savings and indirect savings to that particular technology. And specifically, when I'm talking about the precast wall panel, in terms of cost, again, it depends with how much are you buying your stone, availability of that stone. If the stone is so available, it's cheap, you are in an area that you can easily access the stone, because the cost of construction is also highly dependent on the availability of materials. So if you are in an area that is, you can easily access the stone, then the cost of walling will be cheaper for you, such that if I bring the precast wall panel, the precast wall panel becomes more expensive, for that matter. And vice versa. You could be in an area where the stone is far away, but the precast wall panel is easily accessible to you. So that makes it, that gives you a saving. Okay? So you want to compare the two items. First, you need to know how much do they cost in my locality, because the prices are not standard. Remember, one of the key things that affect prices of materials is transport. Transport is a very significant element in terms of getting the material. You might be told that the cost of buying is maybe 1,000, but have you factored transport? Because maybe the transport could be, you could be transferring it in a far place, and of course you are aware that bei ya mafuta imepanda, so we can't ignore the element of transport. So in my view, within the locality, in my view, this is my personal view, in many localities within Nairobi, in many places, the cost of masonry and the cost of precast almost compare. Almost. One could be higher than the other, but the difference is slightly small. Okay, again also depends with the cost of labor. Mission of columns, thank you. And Mihaki is asking, how durable are the houses made of alternative technologies last? How durable are the houses made of alternative technology last? Right. Okay, so we continue, and then I hope I'll be able to answer those questions as we move along. So, I was talking about the direct benefit of precast vis-a-vis the masonry, or the direct saving, or the direct cost. Now, for masonry, which is conventional, we have so many people who have been doing the masonry walls. So there are many fundis. So they are ordinary. There are those rates that are normal. The one side with precast panel, which is an advantage to the precast panel, is the ease with which you can be able to do your walls. You just require to be able to set the first panels, and you set them vertically aligned, ikue kabiro kabisa. After you've done that, ingine ina interlock. It is easy to interlock. They interlock very easily. So you, neither of the two do you require highly specialized fundis. They are not jargon. Even precast panel, you just require a good fundi who can be able to set it up vertically. And of course, many manufacturers can guide in how that is done. Many of the manufacturers are able to guide on that. Now, there is an indirect cost that is attached to precast panel that touches on plaster. There's an indirect cost benefit that is attached to the precast panel that is on plaster. So there is where precast gets an advantage. Besides the ease and the quick approach to construct the house with precast panel, but there's also the saving on the plaster. Why I'm saying that is because precast panels, they come with a smooth finish, as if the panels, when it is done, it looks like it has been plastered. And if at all the cost of plaster is something to you, then now there is where the difference begins to come from. I said the cost between the two in terms of doing them, the cost compares. In some instances, the precast panel will be slightly more expensive, or in some instances, the masonry stones would be slightly more expensive, depending on another cost benefit that is called the plastering. So at the plastering, you will, for the masonry stones, you would plaster the stones on the inside or even on the outside. But where you require to plaster, for the precast panels, you only do what we call skimming. You just skim. Again, even for the masonry stone, after plastering, you skim and then you paint. For precast panel, you skip the part of plastering, you only skim and paint. And that's where the saving would come from. Then we have, so David had asked the question about the use or omission of columns. Now, the question about the omission and how many columns that you need for your house also is, there are so many factors that would influence that. Number one, if your house, remember I talked about suspending your house. If your house is going to be suspended, then those pillars are very important. And you need a maximum number, as many as possible. And they have to go the full height, as much as possible. Unless they begin to interfere with the room, then that can be seen how it can be affected. For grounds that have difficult terrain, or they are on a slopy ground, or you feel like the ground is not so stable, it will be very good to have a good number of pillars. For rooms that have huge openings, I mean, you have a big opening here, a big opening, you just want to have a luxury living. In that case, you would still require columns where necessary. So, does that mean that there are no situations where you can't have pillars? You can. Is it possible for you to do a house without pillars completely? And up to what? Up to what level? 3 or 4 floors? Say if you are doing 3 floors. Yes, it is possible not to do columns. So, 1, assuming your ground is okay, stable. Number 2, your terrain is good enough. Number 3, you are using the ordinary, the conventional method. That is the masonry, that are of good quality. Number 4, your spaces, your openings are not so big. I mean, when I talk about opening, I'm talking about you have a door or an arc that is so big, or you have an open plan sitting living room, an open plan kitchen, that where the wall, the support here, there is a big distance. So that case, you need to incorporate some pillars in some places. But if you have a bit compact of your building, then in that case you may not necessarily, and that matter you have them good blocks, good building blocks, and your ground is good. Yeah, you can. It's possible to omit columns. Again, columns help in overcoming. Okay, let me come again. Columns help in protecting the house against any lateral load that can arise. When I talk about lateral load, I am talking about, say for example, there is some strong wind, very strong wind that has an effect on the building, because stones do not have good strength or to resist horizontal forces. So horizontal forces like wind, like earthquake, if at all your area is also not stable, maybe strong winds, very strong winds, or you have earthquakes, there is cases of earthquakes, then it is also important to have columns. But if those are not present, and you do not foresee that, and all other parameters that I've talked about before and are well taken care of, then it is possible not to have columns. Let me see whether I've answered that question. And yeah, but if you are going beyond 3 floors, or even from 3 floors, I would really encourage you to include columns. So let me say, not really as a rule of thumb, from 3 floors upwards. Of course, you don't start the columns from there. Talk about if your building has more than 3 floors, then have columns, because the stones have a limitation in terms of strength that they can be able to hold. So columns now come to supplement the capability that the stones have. Then, how durable are the houses made of alternative technology? How long do they last? Well, depends. It also depends the technology. As I talked about interlocking soil blocks, the interlocking soil stabilized blocks, the Makiga, some of them were not able to last for long. You can see some houses done on those interlocking soil blocks looking so old, and you can't believe that it was done less than 10 years ago. But ordinarily, a well done house with EPS, with precast panel, And any other technology, it will last for long, and especially if it has been done right, including the interlocking soil stabilized blocks. So it is as durable as the conventional. That will be my response. Now, I was to talk about the slabs. I was also to talk about the slabs, and after I've talked about the walls, what are some of the alternatives that we have for the slab? Now, that now ties into what Nancy had asked about beam and block. So, the conventional. What has been the conventional for the slabs? The conventional for the slab has been what we call a reinforced concrete slab. What do I mean? A reinforced concrete slab is a slab, the slab is the one that we are stepping on. It's a slab that is made of concrete. Well, I want to believe that we all know concrete, which is a mixture of ballast, cement, and sand. So it is concrete that has chuma inside. So the chuma help to strengthen the concrete. And that's why it's called reinforced. Reinforced is to strengthen. So it is a concrete that has been strengthened with reinforcement bars or the chumas. So that has been the ordinary, and I will call it the reinforced concrete slab. Now, again, the cost of chuma, the cost of rebars, the reinforcement bars, the chuma, the cost has been increasing. What the cost was some years back has almost doubled. In fact, it has doubled, depending on the year. More than 10 years ago, the cost has more than doubled. The cost of rebar is now being bought at around 700 shillings. Okay, so that tells you that the cost of construction that has had that has hanging somewhere, they are suspended, like the first floor, the second floor, or even if at all the ground floor has been, what I talked about, suspended. If that be the case, then people are looking for ways to save money. The cost of cement has also been increasing. So the question is, how can I navigate and do my slab cheaply or in a way that is affordable? So that has brought the conversation to seeking out other alternatives as far as the slab is concerned. So I'll mention a few technologies that have come up as far as the slab is concerned. Number one, other than what we called the reinforced concrete slab, the ordinary, the conventional one, now we have what we call the beam and block. And then we also have the EPS slabs, and so on and so forth. There are of course several other technologies. I would also mention of hollow pots, hollow concrete pots, or hollow, what do we call it? Hollow pot slabs, or ribbed slabs. All those are technologies. Now, one of the oldest technologies that have been employed as far as the slab is concerned is what we call the waffle slabs. I'm not sure whether my listener, you know the waffle slab, but they have been very old. You have gone to a house and it has some holes on the ceiling. It has some holes, some box-like. Yeah, that has been made of the waffle slabs. They are very old, as far as I know. I mean, they have been there for quite some time. But again, some of the technologies that are gaining traction over time. One I'll talk about the beam and block, and there are two types of beam and block. We talk about them, and the other one is EPS and also the hollow pot. So the hollow blocks is whereby you have blocks that are hollow, that are laid in rows, and in between each row there is a gap where we put reinforcement bars, and then we come and pour concrete. But above the blocks we have a BRC, a mesh fabric, and then we do concrete on top of that. So the amount of concrete that is required for the hollow pot is less than the amount of concrete that you'd require for the ordinary, the conventional. So that would translate to kind of a saving on the part of cement. Again, for this, the amount of reinforcement that is required for the hollow pot is less than the ordinary. So that also a saving on the part of reinforcement. But again, this has also not, you also need to remember that there's an added cost of the blocks. There's an added cost of the blocks, and that has to be put into perspective when you are looking at the cost of the hollow pot vis-a-vis the conventional. Right, so having talked about the hollow pot, the second one, which is the EPS. Again, you remember I talked about the EPS, the expanded polystyrene. Now this one now for the slab is the same, that has some shape. It has some shape, and then the shape, you would have some gaps, just like hollow pot. We will have some gaps where you put the reinforcement, and then it has a mesh. It has a mesh. That one comes with a mesh, and then you pour concrete. So it behaves more or less the same as the hollow pot. And as I talk about the slab, I forgot to mention something on the walls. Maybe let me just mention this in passing about bricks. Bricks is also one of the technologies that have been used. They are clay-fired bricks that have been used before for long. And one of the good thing about bricks is how they give you a good finish. It gives you a good impression. There's the aesthetics are well taken care of. So about the slabs again, let me come back to the slabs. The second item that I was talking about was the EPS technology, and then I also mentioned about the beam and block. And I said that there are two types of beam and block. The first one, we normally call it the T beam and block, the T beam and block, and the second one is the flat beam and block. The T beam and block, or the beam and block technology, is where you have a small beam. There's a small, on the slab, you have a series of a beam, a small beam, and a layer of blocks. Where you would put, in the hollow pot, where you would put the chuma, is replaced with a beam, a small beam. That is a precast concrete beam. And then you have another layer of hollow blocks. Then a beam, another line of hollow blocks. So it also behaves the same way as the hollow pot slab, but in this case, the amount of concrete is greatly reduced. When you buy the beam and block, you do not need to buy the chuma that you put between the blocks. The only thing you buy is the mesh fabric at the top. So for both beam, both the T-beam and the flat beam and block, you only need BRC mesh and a thin layer of concrete, and that is it. You do not now buy the normal chuma. So that technology saves you from the the headache of knowing the prices of reinforcement for the slab. You don't need to buy the D10, the D8 for the slab. You'll only be concerned with the reinforcement for the beam. Again, there's a video that I've talked about the two aspects of beam and block, the flat beam and block and the T-beam and block. And the question was, how does that, is there a saving? Again, also depends with the availability of the materials. For the concrete, you need to know, is my sand, how much is the sand, how much is the ballast, how much is the chuma around me? Because if I'm a place where I can get this bought cheaply, then I can just go ahead and do the conventional. But if at all the cost is significantly high, then you need to explore what are the cost per square meter for each. Well, again, the cost difference isn't as much. There are some technologies that would give you some saving depending with the place. Yeah, depending with the place. So indirect benefits for the beam and block and the hollow pot, because of the underneath of the slab is a bit rough. Doing the plastering on the ceiling is easy as compared to the slab. The normal slab you'll have to hack. Again, that's a small cost that is involved. How durable is it? How safe is it? I only have concern with the hollow pot because in the industry I've seen people who are doing some funny thing from a professional. It needs to be done professionally. Most of the manufacturers, they have to come and do a design for you and tell you this is what you're going to put and these are the chuma that you're going to put for that matter. And that becomes easy for you. So caution on the hollow pot, but the others, it is well taken care of. Now, I can see we are moving on well. Let me see if at all we could be having any other question. Okay, so for the roofing type, we talked about three types of roofing. We have the normal roofing, the mabati, be it Decra, be it the shingles, be it, there are several kind of roof coverings that can be done, the clay tiles that can be done for the normal roofing. The normal roofing is what the question was asking about, the hipped roof, the roof that has a shape, okay, and it has mabati or Decra or any other material above it. So ordinarily, this roof for normal houses, you'd require that covering. That's the roof covering. You'd also require a structure for it. And that structure would be made of timber. So it comprises of timber, trusses, the rafters, purlins. Those are terms that are in the construction industry. So to do that roof, you require the structure. In many cases, we would have the structure done with timber, and then you do the covering. And maybe there could be some accessories that are needed before you do the covering. Maybe like some sheets or buttons, depending on the type of roof covering that you are doing. Now, the second one is what we have known as the flat roof. The flat roof is where you do not do the roof covering, but instead you do a slab at the top. I've seen this work so well with houses that are a bit square in shape. Again, it's a matter of preference. There are people who love the ordinary roof covering. There are others who love the flat roof covering. It's a matter of preference, and the shape, the concept that you want to go by, right? So it's a matter of preference, and because of the cost implication of the flat roof, because sometimes I find the flat roof, since this is an ordinary slab, and the changing cost of materials, the cement and the chuma, to be specific, vis-a-vis the normal roof, where you can be able to use ordinary mabati. If you are using ordinary mabati, you have your cost of normal roofing vis-a-vis the flat roof, there is a big difference. So if you do the roofing with the ordinary mabati, you find that your roof will be cheaper than doing with flat roof. But there are also other materials that you can use for the roofing that now make the cost to be higher than the flat roof, or to be the same. So there are people who would prefer to do flat roof. They love the design that has a flat roof, but you don't want to go the extra mile of doing the slab. So you resort to do the normal roof, but this roof is gently sloped with ordinary mabati, because they are not going to be seen, and then you do a walling around it that now creates an impression of a flat roof. So this new approach, or this new concept, is what we call it, or has been called, the hidden roof. So it's a normal roof. It's a normal roof that looks like a flat roof. Okay, so that is the hidden roof. So it's a third alternative. So why many would go for that is because, one, the hidden roof would be cheaper than the slab, the flat roof. Yet it ends up looking the same as the flat roof. Secondly, as compared to the normal roof, again, it will be cheaper in the sense, in my view, it will be cheaper in the sense of the structure. Remember that for the ordinary roof, the slope is the slope is bigger. There's a bigger slope. The slope is more steeper with the normal roof as compared to the hidden roof. Okay, so because of that, then you find that the materials that would be required, both to do the roofing structure and also for the roof covering, also vary. So you require, for the same area, you would require more material for a normal roof vis-a-vis for a hidden roof. So there is a saving there. That makes now the hidden roof more cheaper. I would say it's even way more cheaper than the two. Okay, not way more cheaper. I think I should not use the word way. I should say it's cheaper. Again, remember, you will have to do some courses of stone. And the one key implication that you need to know with the hidden roof is that you require a gutter. You'd require a gutter to drain off the water, and that gutter is done on the inside. So that is the one cost implication that would not be necessary with the normal roof, because for the normal roof you can do the plastic gutters, but for this one you do a gutter on the inside, and mainly to be done with concrete. So that increases the cost of the hidden roof. But at the end of the day, you have the privilege of using ordinary mabati for the hidden roof vis-a-vis for the normal roof. Because for the normal roof, the mabati will be seen, but for the hidden roof, the mabati is not seen. Right, I think answered, Nancy, your question on the beam and block, and Mwihaki on the precast wall panels. I want to believe that has been answered. Right. Okay. Sawa sawa. So I think that is it for today. I'm glad that we were able to touch base. We are looking forward to having more of these live sessions where you can be able to ask your questions and we answer them as we move along. Be able to and with confidence. That is our perspective for this year, for you, for you. So kindly let's continue to tune in. Let's continue to join. I know there's still more. There's still more about these mistakes. There's still more touching on how do you plan, how do you read a plan, a drawing plan, how do you estimate the cost of a building. All those would be very important. Maybe just to read this thank you thank you notes from Nancy. Thank you from Jacob. Thank you notes. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. So that is it for today. Once again, this is the Building Consultants Show, where we seek to educate, challenge, and inspire you on your journey of construction. Kindly let's continue to tune in, subscribe if you have not subscribed, and also share to your friends, to your neighbors who are desiring to do construction. And for tonight, just want to wish you a lovely evening and stay blessed. Thank you.